shocking moment, their name lights up your screen. What happens inside your nervous system in the exact half second their name appears on your phone again? Think about it. You were fine. You were breathing normally. You were finally going a whole afternoon without checking if they viewed your story. And then, out of nowhere, the universe cracks open and their name is right there on your screen, glowing like it never left. Your stomach drops. Your chest tightens. Your hands go cold. And a voice inside you whispers something you didn't want to admit you still felt. They came back. Listen closely, because what I'm about to tell you is going to change the way you look at every single message an avoidant ex has ever sent you. That reaction you just felt, that electric surge running through your body, that is not love, that is not destiny, that is not a sign from the universe. That is your nervous system remembering a person it was trained to chase. And until you understand the difference between attachment activation and genuine connection, you will keep responding to their texts from the exact same wound that let them hurt you in the first place. But stay with me, because by the time this is over, you're going to know something most people never figure out in their entire lives. Here is the truth nobody prepared you for. When an avoidant ex reaches back out, the moment feels enormous. It feels like a movie. It feels like validation. It feels like proof that they finally get it, that they finally see you, that they finally miss you the way you miss them. And in that split second, your brain does something dangerous. It rewrites history. Suddenly, the nights you cried yourself to sleep get quieter. The cold silences get shorter. The mixed signals get softer. Because your mind is desperate to protect the fantasy that if they came back, it must mean something. But what if I told you their return has almost nothing to do with you and almost everything to do with a pattern buried so deep inside them they don't even know it's running? Here is what happens inside you the moment you see that notification. Your amygdala, the alarm system of your brain, lights up like a fire alarm in a quiet house. Cortisol floods your bloodstream. Your heart rate spikes. Your breathing becomes shallow. And your prefrontal cortex, the part of you that makes clear, grounded, self-respecting decisions, goes offline. Right at the moment you need clarity the most, your body pulls the plug on it. This is why so many people respond to an avoidant ex in ways that make them cringe an hour later. It's not weakness. It's biology. Your body is doing what it was conditioned to do around this specific person. And that conditioning is exactly what we're going to break. Now here's where it gets even more interesting. The pull you feel toward them is not random. It is not soulmate energy. It is not fate. It is something psychologists call trauma bonding paired with intermittent reinforcement. When someone gives you love, then takes it away, then gives it again, then vanishes, then reappears, your brain gets addicted to the unpredictability. It's the same mechanism that makes slot machines so dangerously satisfying. You aren't chasing them. You are chasing the next hit of relief after long stretches of pain. And the second their name shows up on your screen, your body thinks the pain is finally ending. But is it? Or is this just the next spin of the wheel? Think about the last time they reached out before this one. Remember how you felt. Remember what you did. Remember what you told yourself. And now ask yourself honestly, did that message actually change anything? Or did it just restart the cycle at a slightly different point? Because here's the secret hiding in plain sight. Avoidant exes rarely text because they are ready to change. They text because their internal discomfort has hit a certain level, and reaching out to you is the fastest known way for them to soothe it. You are not being pursued. You are being regulated. And once you see this clearly, once you really feel it in your bones, something powerful happens. You stop being the emotional pharmacy for someone who never planned to stay. But before you can respond the right way, you have to understand what is really happening on their side too. Because contrary to what breakup blogs will tell you, avoidants are not cold, heartless robots. They are not villains. They are human beings running a very specific attachment program that was installed long before they ever met you. And what pushes them to finally break their silence, what actually goes through their mind in the hours, sometimes days, before they hit send, is a psychological battle most people never see. That battle is where your real answer lives. Not in what they said, not in the emoji they used, not in the timing of the text, but in the internal war that forced them to reach out in the first place. Because once you understand what is happening inside them before they text, you will never again mistake a message for a miracle. You will read it for what it actually is, and you will finally have the power to respond, not react. What's actually happening inside an avoidance mind before they hit send? Have you ever wondered what it's actually like to live inside the mind of someone who runs from love? Not the surface story, not the excuses they give you, but the real, raw, uncomfortable truth of what happens inside an avoidant human being in the days, hours, and minutes before they finally break their silence and reach out to you again. Because if you really knew, you would never again feel small when they don't text, and you would never again feel triumphant when they do. Here is something that will shake you. An avoidant does not pull away because they don't feel. They pull away because they feel too much. Read that again. Their nervous system was wired in early childhood to interpret closeness as danger. When love got too warm, someone in their world got too cold, too controlling, too unpredictable, or too absent. So their brain made a deal with itself. It said, "We will survive love by never fully entering it." And that deal is still running today, silently, every time they get close to someone who could actually matter. Every time they got close to you. Now picture what happens after the breakup. In the first few days, an avoidant often feels something strange and even a little disturbing to them. They feel relief. That relief is not proof they didn't love you. That relief is the exhale of a nervous system that has been holding its breath for months. Suddenly the pressure is gone. Suddenly they don't have to perform intimacy. Suddenly they can breathe without wondering if they're breathing wrong. This is what attachment researchers call deactivation, and it is the avoidant's oldest survival strategy. Their mind literally suppresses the emotional bond to protect itself from the vulnerability of missing you. But here's where it gets fascinating. Deactivation is not permanent. It is a phase. It has a shelf life. And that shelf life is shorter than most people think. Somewhere between 2 weeks and 3 months, depending on the person, the suppressed emotions start leaking through the cracks. A song plays. They pass a restaurant. They see someone laugh the way you laughed. And that tightly locked emotional vault, the one they told themselves was empty, starts making noise. This is the moment the avoidant enters what psychology calls the loneliness surge. And this is usually when the phone comes out. But do not confuse the loneliness surge with genuine transformation. The avoidant is not sitting there thinking, "I have done deep inner work and I am ready to be a better partner." They are sitting there feeling a discomfort they cannot name, and their brain is scanning for the fastest, most familiar way to soothe it. And who is the most familiar source of comfort in their memory bank? You. The person who once made them feel safe enough to almost stay. The person whose voice used to lower their heart rate. The person whose messages used to make them feel chosen without demanding anything scary in return. Your name gets pulled up like a reflex, like a childhood blanket dragged out from the back of the closet. Now watch what happens next, because this is the part almost no one talks about. Before an avoidant ex sends that text, they usually spend hours, sometimes days, in what can only be described as an internal courtroom. One side of them argues, "Don't do it, you know how this ends, you finally have your peace back." The other side argues, "But I miss them, but what if it's different this time, but what if they moved on?" And between those two voices, a third voice speaks, quieter but stronger. That third voice is the attachment system itself, and it does not care about logic. It only cares about proximity. It just wants to know if you are still there. So when they finally hit send, that message you're staring at is not the beginning of a plan. It is the end of a battle, and they usually lost. They cave to the discomfort. They pick the short-term relief over the long-term growth, which means the text landing on your phone is not evidence of their strength. It is evidence of their struggle. And this reframe changes everything, because now you're not looking at a message from someone who has finally figured it out. You're looking at a message from someone who is testing the emotional temperature of the room to see if they can step back inside for a moment, warm up, and then leave again if things get too intense. This is why avoidant texts so often feel weirdly light, casual, or emotionally shallow. A random "Hey stranger, this song reminded me of you. I hope you're doing well." That lightness is not coldness. That lightness is the strategy. Because if the message is small enough, they can retreat quickly if you respond strongly. If the message is casual enough, they don't have to admit they miss you. If the message is vague enough, they can control the emotional exposure. It is a test, a probe, a toe dipped in water to see if it's safe to swim. And here is the psychological insight that will free you. The avoidant is not trying to manipulate you. Most of them don't even know they're doing this. Their nervous system is running the show, and their conscious mind is just narrating along. They genuinely believe they are reaching out because they miss you, and part of them does. But underneath that, a much older machinery is turning, one designed to maintain emotional access without emotional risk. And unless you understand this machinery, you will keep answering the surface message while getting hit by the underground current. So the real question is no longer, what do they mean by this text? The real question is, what part of them sent it, and what part of me is about to respond? The 3 hidden reasons avoidants break their silence. Why does someone who spent months acting like they didn't care suddenly decide, on a random Tuesday night, that they need to talk to you again? What flips inside them? What breaks? What gives? Because if you understand the exact psychological triggers that force an avoidant to break their own silence, you gain something almost nobody has. You gain the ability to see the text before it arrives. You gain the ability to read the reason underneath the words. And you gain the ability to respond from wisdom instead of hope. There are 3 hidden reasons an avoidant X reaches out again. Not 1, not 2, 3. And each one requires a completely different kind of awareness from you, because each one carries a completely different emotional intention, even if the text itself looks identical. The first reason is what we can call the nostalgia loop. This is when an avoidance memory quietly rewires itself over time. In the beginning after the breakup, their brain focuses on everything that felt suffocating, every argument, every moment they felt controlled, every time they felt they weren't enough. This is called negative filtering, and it protects their decision to leave. But as the weeks pass and the pressure of the relationship fades, that filter starts to weaken. The bad memories lose their sharpness. The good memories start rising to the surface. Suddenly they remember your laugh, the way you made coffee, the way you looked at them like they were the answer to a question they didn't know they were asking. And this rewriting is not conscious. It's their mind doing what all human minds do. It's romanticizing what is no longer a threat. Because now that you can't ask for closeness, closeness with you finally feels safe. This is the cruel joke of avoidant attachment. They can only love you fully when they cannot fully have you. When a nostalgia loop text arrives, it usually has a soft, sentimental, dreamy tone. It references something specific. A shared inside joke. A place you used to go. A memory only the two of you have. It feels like a window opening. And here's the trap. That window is real, but it's temporary. The nostalgia is not a decision to come back. It is a feeling passing through them. If you respond by flinging yourself through the window, you will land right back inside a house they are already planning to leave again. The second reason is what we can call ego reassurance. And this one stings, but you need to hear it. Sometimes an avoidant reaches out not because they miss you, but because they miss being missed by you. There is a difference, a big one. Avoidants often have a fragile sense of self underneath the confident exterior. When they were with you, your love acted as a quiet mirror, reflecting back to them that they were lovable, that they were worthy, that they were chosen. When the relationship ended, that mirror shattered, and now, weeks or months later, they need a quick glance in the mirror again. They need to check that they still exist in your world. They need to know that if they knocked, the door would still open. This is not love. This is emotional inventory. They are counting what they still have, and you are one of the assets. Ego reassurance texts usually feel a little off. They're often vague, weirdly timed, and demand almost nothing from them, but hope everything from you. You crossed my mind today. I just wanted to say hi. A late-night message with no follow-up plan. These texts are not invitations. They are checkpoints. And if you pour your heart into responding, you become the emotional refill they needed, and they will disappear again the moment their internal battery hits full. The third reason is the deepest, the rarest, and the one most worth paying attention to. It is the resurfacing of suppressed emotion. This happens when an avoidant, usually a fearful avoidant more than a dismissive one, hits a wall in their own healing where they can no longer outrun what they felt for you. Something has cracked their defense system. Maybe they tried to date someone new and felt nothing. Maybe they had a hard month and realized the person they wanted to call was you. Maybe they went to therapy and finally saw the pattern they've been running their whole life. And in that moment of clarity, they reach for you not from nostalgia, not from ego, but from a genuine, terrifying honesty. You can usually feel the difference. These texts have weight. They admit something. They take a small emotional risk. They say things like, "I've been thinking about how I handled things," or "I know I wasn't the partner you deserved," or "I don't expect anything, but I wanted you to know I miss you." These texts are rare. They are not the norm. And even when they happen, they don't guarantee change. They only guarantee awareness. Awareness is the seed of change, not the proof of it. Here is the insight that ties all three together. In every single case, the avoidant is reaching out from a state that is temporary. Nostalgia fades, ego gets refilled, emotional cracks get patched up, which means the window they are opening is not the same as an invitation to stay. And your job is not to leap through every window. Your job is to notice which window is opening and to decide from your most grounded self whether it is worth walking toward at all. Because responding to the wrong window with the right words is still walking straight into the same house that broke your heart the first time. The response mistakes that instantly push them away again. Why do so many people accidentally destroy their own chances of reconnection within the first 5 minutes of responding to an avoidant ex? Not because they're not smart, not because they don't care, but because the very reactions that feel right in the moment are the exact reactions that trigger an avoidant's deepest fears and slam the door shut faster than it ever opened. And the worst part is, most people never even realize they did it. They just watch the conversation fade, feel the coldness return, and blame themselves for something that was actually a predictable psychological pattern. The first mistake is emotional flooding. This is when you receive their text and every feeling you've been suppressing for weeks comes rushing to the surface at once. The relief, the anger, the longing, the confusion, the hope. And instead of processing it inside yourself first, you pour it all into your reply. You send a long paragraph. You explain how much you missed them. You bring up the pain. You ask why they left. You try to fit an entire relationship's worth of unresolved emotion into a text thread. And here's what happens inside their nervous system when they open that message. Their body reads it as pressure. Their attachment system reads it as engulfment. Their old survival wiring kicks in and whispers, "This is exactly why I left." They don't consciously decide to pull away. Their body decides for them, and the wall goes right back up. What felt like honesty on your side felt like danger on theirs. The second mistake is instant availability. They text at 11 at night, and you respond at 11:01. They send a 2-word message, and you're already typing a paragraph. They reach out after 2 months of silence, and you make yourself available like you've been waiting by the phone the whole time. Now listen carefully, because this is subtle, but crucial. Avoidants are not attracted to your availability. They are attracted to your autonomy. Their attachment system was formed around the belief that people who need too much are people who take too much. When you respond instantly, you unintentionally confirm the story they told themselves to justify leaving. You confirm that your world revolved around them, and now their old suffocation memory reactivates. What you thought was showing openness, they experienced as evidence that nothing has changed. The third mistake is over-explaining. This one is sneaky because it disguises itself as maturity. You want to show them you've grown. You want to prove you understand the relationship better now. You want to demonstrate the insight you've gained during the breakup. So your reply turns into a mini essay about attachment styles, communication patterns, and how you've been reflecting on everything. But here is what over-explaining actually communicates to an avoidant. It communicates that you are still emotionally invested enough to have prepared a speech. It communicates that this conversation is a big deal for you, and the bigger it feels to you, the smaller they need to make themselves to escape the intensity. The paradox is brutal. The more clearly you explain your love, the more clearly they see a reason to run. The fourth mistake is desperate curiosity. This is when you turn the conversation into an interrogation disguised as care. Why did you text me? What do you want? Are you seeing anyone? Do you miss me? What does this mean? Each question feels like a reasonable ask on your side, because you deserve answers. But on their side, every question is a demand for emotional commitment they are not ready to make. Avoidance shut down under direct emotional questioning, the way some people shut down under bright lights. They need shadows to feel safe. And your spotlight, no matter how justified, sends them backing out of the room. The fifth mistake is hostile revenge. This is the opposite trap, and it's just as damaging. You've been hurt. You want them to feel it, so you respond cold, sharp, or sarcastic. You throw a jab. You mention how well you're doing without them. You subtly try to make them jealous. And you tell yourself this is confidence, but it isn't. Confidence doesn't need an audience. Confidence doesn't perform. What you're actually doing is asking them to see how strong you are, which means their opinion still holds power over your emotional state. Avoidance can smell performed indifference from a mile away, and it activates the same defense mechanism as neediness. Both feel like emotional pressure. Both push them further into their shell. The sixth mistake is one almost nobody sees. It is premature forgiveness. This is when they say something remotely warm, and you immediately act like everything is fine. No boundaries. No acknowledgement of what happened. No time given to see if their behavior actually matches their words. You treat one nice message as a redemption arc. But avoidants who face zero resistance often lose respect quickly, because a person who forgives too fast is a person who will accept anything. And accepting anything is exactly the dynamic that made them feel bored, obligated, or trapped in the first place. The deepest truth behind all six of these mistakes is this. Every single one of them communicates a version of the same message. I never really left you. I was still here the whole time. My life paused when yours did. And that message, no matter how sincerely felt, is the single most attractive story to your longing and the single most repellent story to their attachment system. Because an avoidant does not want to come home to a person who never left the porch waiting. They want to come home to a person who built an entire life inside the house and might, if it feels right, open the door. So the question becomes, what does it actually look like to respond from that place? What is the energy, the mindset, the emotional posture of someone who has become that person? Because it is not a trick. It is not a script. It is a completely different way of standing in your own life. The psychology of the powerful response. How secure energy rewires the dynamic. What would happen if the next time an avoidant ex texted you, you didn't respond as the person they left, but as the person they never got to meet? What would change in the dynamic if the moment their message arrived, your entire nervous system said one simple thing back to them, without a single word needing to be typed? I am no longer the emotional home you can visit and leave. I am my own home now. This is what psychology calls secure energy, and it is the single most powerful force in any reconnection dynamic. Not tricks, not scripts, not perfectly worded replies. Secure energy is a state of being that leaks through every word you type, every pause you take, and every silence you allow. Avoidants cannot consciously detect a manipulation, but their nervous system can absolutely detect a shift in your energy from 100 miles away. And when they feel that shift, everything about the dynamic changes, because for the first time, the balance of emotional gravity is no longer on their side. Here is what secure energy actually is at its core. It is the deep internal knowing that your well-being does not depend on their behavior, not their response, not their return, not their apology, not their choice. Your peace lives inside you now, and their message is just a piece of information passing through your day. Not a lifeline, not an emergency, not a verdict on your worth. Just information. And once your body genuinely believes this, the way you respond to their text becomes almost effortless, because you are no longer bargaining with your own hope while typing. But how do you actually get there? Because secure energy is not something you fake, and avoidance can feel the difference between real security and performed security within seconds. Real security is built through a specific inner process, and it starts with what psychologists call the pause. Before you respond to anything, you give yourself space to feel what you're feeling without acting on it. Not 30 seconds, not 5 minutes, sometimes hours, sometimes a full day. You let the initial emotional wave pass so that your response comes from the settled water underneath, not the storm on the surface. In that pause, you ask yourself 3 quiet questions. What do I actually feel right now? What do I actually want? And what response would I be proud of tomorrow morning? That third question is the one that changes lives. Because the version of you that responds at midnight from a place of loneliness is almost never the version of you that would be proud of that response the next morning. Secure energy is built by responding as the person you are becoming, not the person you were when they left. Every text is a small opportunity to practice being that new person. And every time you respond from that place, something rewires inside you, not just inside the conversation. There is another layer to this. Secure energy communicates through what it does not say. An avoidant is used to partners who over-explain, over-reassure, overshare, and over-pursue. Their entire emotional history is a museum of people trying to prove love through volume. When you respond briefly, warmly, and without desperation, you do something their nervous system has almost never experienced from someone who once cared about them. You give them space to actually feel their own emotions instead of managing yours. And in that space, something remarkable often happens. They start missing you for real because there is no longer a wave of your emotion covering theirs. Now, here's the deep paradox that changes everything. The moment you stop needing them to come back, you become the kind of person they actually want to come back to. Not because you played hard to get, not because you tricked them, but because your emotional independence signals to their nervous system that you are safe in a way you never were before. Avoidance fear engulfment above almost everything else. When they sense that you are complete without them, their engulfment alarm turns off. And only when that alarm is off can any part of them actually consider closeness. This is the great irony of avoidant attachment. Chasing them shuts them down. Living your own full life quietly opens them up. Secure energy also carries something called self-anchored communication. This means that when you respond, your words come from your own truth, not from a calculation about what they want to hear. You don't shape your text to get a specific reaction. You shape your text to reflect who you actually are right now. If you feel warm, you allow warmth without collapsing into it. If you feel distant, you allow distance without weaponizing it. If you feel unsure, you allow uncertainty without pretending to have answers. This kind of communication feels foreign at first, because most of us learn to communicate strategically inside relationships with avoidance. But strategic communication is exhausting, and it always leaks. Self-anchored communication is calm, and it always lands. There is one more piece that most people miss. Secure energy carries a willingness to lose them. Read that carefully. Not a hope to lose them, not a desire to lose them, a willingness. It is the internal understanding that if this conversation, this reconnection, this entire dynamic ends today, you will still be okay. You will still wake up tomorrow. You will still build a beautiful life. You will still be loved by someone, somewhere, eventually, deeply. That willingness is not coldness. It is the deepest form of self-respect, and it is the exact quality that makes an avoidant see you differently. Because the person they left was terrified of losing them. And the person they are texting now is not. When your response finally comes from all of this, from the pause, from the questions, from the self-answering, from the willingness, it does not matter if you write 5 words or 50, because the energy behind those words is doing the real work. And that energy is what shifts the entire foundation of the dynamic. But now we have to get practical, because you still have a phone in your hand and a specific type of message on your screen, and you need to know exactly what that message actually means. What to actually say and what never to say based on their text type. If every avoidant text is a psychological signal in disguise, then what exactly are they telling you when they send that specific message on that specific day? Because the words on the screen are almost never the real message. The real message lives in the pattern, the timing, the tone, and the emotional intention underneath. And once you learn to read those signals, you stop responding to what they wrote and start responding to what they actually meant. There are 4 common types of texts an avoidant X sends, and each one carries a completely different emotional weight underneath. Understanding the difference is what separates someone who gets played by the cycle from someone who moves through it with clarity and dignity. The first type is the casual check-in. This is the "Hey, how have you been?" or "Just crossed my mind," or "Hope you're doing well." On the surface, it looks harmless, almost friendly. But underneath, this is almost always a temperature check. They are not asking about your life. They are asking whether the emotional door is still open. They are testing whether you will respond quickly, warmly, or eagerly. And whatever you send back, they will use as data to decide how much closer they can safely come, or how quickly they can retreat. The healthiest response to a casual check-in is calm brevity. You do not ignore, because ignoring becomes its own kind of emotional statement. You do not gush, because gushing confirms the fantasy that you've been frozen in time. You respond like a whole human being with a full life. Something short, warm enough to be kind, but grounded enough to communicate that you are not standing by waiting for them. What you never say is anything that opens the emotional floodgates. No long updates, no hidden hints, no sad references, no fishing questions. You leave the door of your life visible, but not wide open. The second type is the breadcrumb. This is when they send a message that has no clear purpose, no real question, and no follow-up. Something like, "This song made me think of you," or "Saw something today that reminded me of us," or "You would have loved this movie." These messages are designed, often unconsciously, to keep a low-effort emotional thread alive without committing to anything. Breadcrumbs are dangerous because they trigger hope while requiring nothing from them. And the biggest mistake people make with breadcrumbs is treating them as invitations. A breadcrumb is not an invitation. It is a maintenance ping. The healthiest response is either no response or a very light acknowledgement that closes the loop without extending it. If you want to reply, one warm sentence that does not ask a question is enough. What you never do is turn a breadcrumb into a full conversation. Because the moment you build an entire meal out of a crumb, they realize they never have to bring you a full plate again. The third type is the emotional bomb. This is when they text out of nowhere with something heavy, dramatic, or destabilizing. It could be a confession, a random emotional rant, a middle-of-the-night message about how confused they are, or a sudden reveal about their life. These texts often come during a difficult moment for them, when their defenses are lower and their loneliness is louder. And they hit you like a wave because they feel so different from the coldness you were used to. The worst response to an emotional bomb is to match its intensity. If you meet their sudden vulnerability with your own emotional flood, they will feel exposed the next morning and disappear again to regulate the shame. The healthiest response is grounded compassion without collapse. You acknowledge them as a human being. You do not weaponize the moment, but you also do not let their sudden emotion pull you off your center. What you never do is make life decisions based on an emotional bomb. Never agree to meet up. Never restart the relationship. Never make promises. Because the version of them writing that text is not the version of them who will wake up tomorrow. And tomorrow's version almost always retreats. The fourth type is the vulnerable confession. This is the rarest, the most sincere, and the most easily confused with the others. This is when an avoidant, usually after significant time or genuine internal work, sends a message that admits something real. They take responsibility. They name a specific behavior. They express something without expecting a reward. These messages are different because they carry no hidden ask. There is no bait, no fishing, no pressure, just an acknowledgement. The healthiest response to a vulnerable confession is honesty that matches their courage without abandoning your boundaries. You can thank them. You can share how you actually feel. You can even be warm. But you do not skip steps. You do not fast forward to reconnection just because they said one meaningful thing. What you never do is trade months of pain for one paragraph of insight. Awareness is not repair. Words are not action. And even the most beautiful confession has to be tested against consistent behavior over time before it means anything real. Underneath every type of text, there is one principle that governs your response, and it is this. Never respond from urgency. The avoidant's entire relationship style is built on inconsistent timing. They vanish when you need them and reappear when they need you. If you respond to every message the moment it arrives, you become the predictable one, and predictability without mutual investment slowly turns into invisibility. The most powerful responses often come from a place of calm delay. Not games, not manipulation, just the natural rhythm of a person whose life does not pause for a notification. And here is the piece almost nobody talks about. Sometimes the healthiest response is silence, not petty silence, not punishing silence, but the quiet, dignified silence of a person who has done the emotional math and realized this particular message does not deserve a piece of their peace. Silence is not weakness. Silence is a full sentence when you no longer need to prove anything. And when your silence comes from wholeness instead of hurt, it becomes the loudest response of all. The long game, how your response today shapes everything that happens next. What if the way you respond to this one text is not really about them at all, but about the person you are choosing to become for the rest of your life? What if every single word you type back is quietly writing a much bigger story, the story of what you are willing to accept, what you are willing to wait for, and what you are willing to walk away from? Because here is a truth that most people spend years learning the hard way. The response you give an avoidant ex today is rarely just a message. It is a mirror. It shows you exactly where you are in your own healing, and it decides where you go next. Think about the long arc of this. Every relationship you will ever have from this point forward, romantic, professional, familial, will be shaped by the boundaries you set right now with the person who hurt you the most. If you respond from your wound today, you will attract wound-based love tomorrow. If you respond from your growth today, you will attract growth-based love tomorrow. Your nervous system is not just responding to this text, it is rehearsing your future. And every time you choose the higher response, you are literally teaching your body a new definition of love, one that includes safety, consistency, and mutual effort, not just intensity and unpredictability. Now here's a question that will make you uncomfortable, and it should. Do you actually want them back, or do you want to feel chosen? Because those are not the same thing. Wanting someone back is a specific, honest longing for that specific human being with all their flaws and gifts. Wanting to feel chosen is a much older ache, one that started long before them in a childhood story where love felt conditional. Many people who obsess over an avoidant ex are not obsessing over the person. They are obsessing over the closure their inner child never got. And if you don't separate those two, you will keep confusing every reconnection attempt with a chance at healing, when in reality, real healing was never going to come from the person who broke you. It was only ever going to come from you, deciding you would no longer break yourself, trying to be chosen by someone who could not choose themselves. Consider what actually changes an avoidant, because this is the most misunderstood part of the entire dynamic. Avoidants do not change because you convince them. They do not change because you love them enough. They do not change because you waited long enough. Avoidants change when the pain of their pattern finally exceeds the fear of intimacy. That's it. That's the whole equation, and nothing you do, no perfect text, no strategic silence, no beautifully worded boundary, can force that equation to tip. What you can do is stop cushioning their pattern. When you keep responding warmly, keep answering quickly, keep showing them that the door is still slightly open, you actually delay their growth. You give their nervous system permission to keep avoiding because they know you're still there. But when you step fully into your own life, when your responses become calm, spaced, and grounded, when your energy stops chasing theirs, you remove the cushion. And only then does their pattern start to cost them something real. Only then does change even become possible for them. But here's the part that will set you free. Their change is not your project. Read that again. Their change is not your project. Your job is not to be the mirror that finally makes them see themselves. Your job is not to be the safe space that finally teaches them how to love. Your job is to build a life so aligned, so peaceful, so full of your own becoming, that whether they change or not, you win. Because a version of you that only feels complete when they finally get it will always be at the mercy of someone else's timeline. And a version of you that is complete regardless of them is a version of you that no one can ever take hostage again. There is a quiet moment that eventually comes in this healing journey, and you'll know it when it arrives. It's the moment when their name lights up your screen and your body does not spike. Your heart does not race. Your hands do not shake. You feel a small emotion, maybe curiosity, maybe warmth, maybe indifference, and then you go back to your life. That moment is not coldness. That is freedom. That is the day your nervous system finally believes what your mind has been telling it for months. You are safe now. You are whole now. You are home now. And whoever walks into that home from this point forward, they are going to have to meet you where you actually are, not where you used to be when you were begging to be enough. So when you look at their text one more time, remember this. You are not just replying to a message. You are casting a vote for who you are becoming. Every response is a small ballot. Vote for the version of you who no longer negotiates with people who leave. Vote for the version of you who understands that love is not something you audition for. Vote for the version of you who knows that peace is worth more than proximity, that respect is worth more than reconnection, and that the right person, when they eventually arrive, will not require you to become smaller to fit inside their fear. And if they truly are the right one, if by some rare hard-earned miracle they actually do the work and come back as a changed person, they will find you exactly where you should be, not waiting, not wounded, not smaller, but standing tall in the life you built without them, offering love as a choice, never as a lifeline. That is the ending nobody prepared you for. Because it turns out, the real question was never how to respond when your avoidant ex texts. The real question was always, who do you want to be by the time they do? And now, you finally know the answer.